بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. All praise and thanks belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May the peace and blessing of Allah be upon His servant and final messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. As to what follows, we continue our lesson, Sharh Umdat al-Ahkam, explaining the book Umdat al-Ahkam. And the last thing we discussed was etiquette and manners concerning relieving oneself and using the bathroom. And we finished that chapter, alhamdulillah, and today with us is the chapter of Siwak. So we're going to study a few ahadith, about 4 to 5 ahadith, concerning Siwak, its importance and how it's used and what's the best type of it, and incidents in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in where he was using the Siwak, and also where is it recommended most to use a Siwak, and so on. At the end, we've got some Siwak here, inshallah, so we can hand them out so that bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, practically implementing a sunnah after learning it would be the most ideal for it to stick with a person and for a person to commit to it, inshallah ta'ala. Al-ulama rahimahumullah mentioned that Babu Siwak, the chapter of Siwak, it immediately comes after the chapter of wudu, because remember we've already taken the hadith that discussed the wudu. So the chapter of Siwak comes after this because the Siwak is related to al-wudu. You'll find out that it is a sunnah to use the Siwak as you're doing al-wudu. So let's look at the first hadith in this chapter. The first hadith عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لولا أن أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك عند كل صلاة. This is the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu. He mentioned and he said that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, if I did not think it would be a burden upon my ummah, I would have commanded them to use the siwak at every salat. That's the hadith. First and foremost, when we discuss a siwak, it's good to understand its ruling in Islam. And the ruling concerning as-siwak is that it is a sunnah, rather a sunnah mu'akkada. It's a stressed upon and emphasized sunnah. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said concerning the siwak, mardatun lil-rabbi matharatun lil-fam. When the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned and stated the virtues of a siwak, he mentioned two things in this hadith. He said, it is mardatul lil-rabb. It's a means to earn the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. Imagine that. A stick that is used with sincerity as a worship, it earns a person the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is something that we are in need every single moment of our life. A siwak earns you this. And number two, mataharatul lil-fam. It is a purification of the mouth. It purifies the mouth, beautifies the smell of the mouth, and so on. These are two benefits and virtues that the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned. And if that's the only thing that was mentioned, it would have been enough for a person to be convinced to commit to this sunnah for the rest of his life. And in addition to this, Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he mentioned more virtues and benefits for as-siwak. We'll read the list of what Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah mentioned of the virtue and the benefit of as-siwak. He mentioned this in his book Zad al-Ma'ad. The book for Ibn al-Qayyim, Zad al-Ma'ad, he wrote in this book everything about the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, what the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam ate, what he used, how he prayed, and all matters related to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam were in this book Zad al-Ma'ad of 5 volumes. So he wrote a chapter about as-siwak, and he said that the benefits of as-siwak are as follows. Number 1, yatibu al-fam. It purifies, beautifies the mouth. Number 2, he said, yashuddu al-litha. It strengthens the gum. Then he said, وَيَقْطَعُ الْبَلْغَمْ. It cuts out the phlegm. You know the phlegm that when a person, like that kind of phlegm that comes out from the person's chest, that a siwak gets rid of this. it removes it. وَيَحْلُ الْبَصَرِ, and it clears the eyesight. So there is a relationship between a siwak and the eyesight of a person. وَيُذْهِبُ بِالْحَفْرِ, and it gets rid of tooth decay. So it delays tooth decay and so on. وَيَصِحُّ الْمَعِدَةِ, and it rectifies the gut, meaning it's good for the gut health. وَيُصَفِّ الصَّوْتِ, it clarifies the voice. So the voice, when a person speaks, becomes more clear in his speech. وَيُعِينُ عَلَى هَضْمِ الطَّعَامِ, and it helps in digesting the food. وَيُسَهِّلُ مَجَارِ الْكَلَامِ, and it allows for speech to come out much easier. Firstly, we said it clarifies the sound, and then it allows for the sound and the voice to come out from the voice box in a much easier and smooth and effortless manner. وَيُنَشِّطُ لِلْقِرَاءَةِ وَالذِّكْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ, and it gives a person energy and strength for his prayers and the recitation of the Quran and for al-dhikr. وَيَطْرُدُ النَّوْمِ, and it removes laziness and sleep. وَيُرْضِي الرَّبِّ, and it earns a person the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. وَيُعْجِبُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, and the angels are amazed by it. They love the smell that comes out from the one who uses a siwak. وَيُكْثِرُ الْحَسَنَاتِ, and it increases and multiplies a person's hasanat. Subhanallah. All of this was mentioned by Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. والسواك, we said it's an emphasized sunnah all times, but especially, it is a sunnah especially during the prayer, meaning just before a person starts as-salat, there, عند الوضوء, during al-wudu, and we'll speak about when exactly is it a sunnah for al-wudu. It's also stressed upon sunnah when reciting the Quran, when entering the house. Aisha radiallahu anha says that the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he entered the house, the first thing he would do is use a siwak. When he entered the house, he yusallimu ala ahli, he would say assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah, and then he would use a siwak. وعند تغير رائحة الفم, and whenever the breath of the mouth changes, then it is a sunnah to use it, so that you can change the breath of the mouth. وعند القيام من النوم, and when waking up from a night's sleep. And we'll get to that hadith and we'll share some more about this. But this is where it is most emphasized to use a siwak. So in this hadith here, a siwak, we were speaking about a siwak. It's called a siwak, and it's also called al-miswak. So basically the definition of a siwak is the toothstick that is used to brush and wash the teeth. That's what a siwak means. In this hadith here of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, لولا أن أشق على أمتي, if I did not think that it would have been a burden upon my nation, لأمرتهم, I would have commanded them to use a siwak at every time of salat. لأمرتهم, and there's another narration, لفرضت عليهم, not only I would have commanded them, I would have made it obligatory upon them that they use the siwak at every salat. Subhanallah. So from this hadith, the way the hadith is worded, we learn that the siwak is an emphasized sunnah and not a wajib. Why? Because the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said clearly, if I did not think it was a burden, I would have commanded them. Meaning he did not command us. As a result, it remains to be said that it is an emphasized sunnah to use a siwak before you pray. Right? Tamam. Well, ulama rahimahumullah said, because of the way the hadith is worded, and that this would have been an obligation, it would have been an obligation, but of course we know it is a sunnah, that means the one who uses it earns the reward of al-wajib. So this is from the worships, that they are a sunnah in their ruling, but they grant a person, or a person earns the reward of an obligatory act because of this hadith. So using a siwak, when you use it, yes, it is a sunnah, However, the reward that is earned from it is the reward of a fard. And you know, of course, the reward of the fard is that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, as Allah Azza wa Jal said in al-Hadith al-Qudsi, وَمَا تَقَرَّبَ إِلَيَّ عَبْدِي بِشَيْءٍ أَحَبَّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا افْتَرَضْتُهُ عَلَيْهِ. That the thing that brings you closest to Allah Azza wa Jal is that which Allah Azza wa Jal obligated upon you. Nothing brings you closer to Allah more than the obligations. This is why there always needs to be an emphasis in your life upon the obligations. You see, so many people are always concerned about Sunnah. What's the Sunnah to say here? What's the Sunnah to say there? How do we pray the night prayers? How do we do this? And tayyib, that's good. But before all of this, focus on the obligation, because this is what will bring you the closest to Allah Azza wa Jal. And so imagine this. This is a Sunnah in its ruling, but it earns the person the reward of a wajib. It's very important to go through the ahadith and to learn the proper usage of it and how it is to be used. لَأَمَرْتُهُمْ. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam at the beginning of the hadith, when he said, لَوْلَا أَنْ أَشُقَّ عَلَىٰ أُمَّتِي, if I did not think it would be a burden upon my nation, we learn from this the compassion and the gentleness and the mercifulness of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam towards his ummah. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam calculated and knew that this would have been a burden upon the nation. Imagine it was a wajib before every salat. Where's everyone's stick, right? Imagine that. Imagine it was a wajib. Subhanallah, for Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, from his compassion and mercy towards the ummah, he did not make it a fard. But this is something Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam loves. To the point where there is a narration, يعني النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said, أكثرت عليكم في السواك. He came out to his companions and he said, يعني I've increased and I've mentioned the siwak to you, my people, in abundance. He acknowledged that he's been repeating this command over and over again. أكثرت عليكم في السواك. You know, like in our language we'll say, I've done your head in with a siwak. أكثرت عليكم في السواك. Now, it's something that should be understood to all of us, that it was beloved to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to use this at all times. Bis-siwak. Bis-siwak here, what is intended by as-siwak in this hadith is the action of at-tasawwuk. So when the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, I would have commanded my ummah to use as-siwak at every salat, it means at-tasawwuk, yani the actual motion of brushing the teeth before as-salat. This is what he would have commanded. There's another narration that says, لَأَمَرْتُهُمْ بِالسِّوَاكِ مَعَ كُلِّ وُضُوء. I would have commanded them to use a siwak at every wudu. But why didn't Imam Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi mention this hadith in this book? Because we said that the condition was that he will only bring a hadith that are found in Sahih al-Bukhari or Muslim. So in Sahih al-Bukhari or Muslim, the narration of using a siwak at the time of prayer, that's what's found in Sahih al-Bukhari or Muslim. As for the hadith of a siwak at every wudu, then that is not found in Sahih al-Bukhari or Muslim. So that's why he didn't mention it. But we'll mention it. طيب. From the hadith we also learn that there is no problem and there's no issue in using a siwak in front of people. So yes, it is a worship, but there is no harm in using it in front of people. Because imagine if the believers are supposed to pray in congregation and it is a sunnah mu'akkada to use it before the prayer starts, that's of course going to be in front of people. So we learn from the hadith that it's fine to use a siwak in front of the people. And we also learn that the hadith is not, the siwak is not only to clean the mouth from impurities. It's not only to clean the mouth from food residues and so on. Rather, a siwak is to purify the mouth and prepare a person for the standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لولا أن أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك عند كل صلاة. Also, العلماء رحمهم الله took from this hadith that it is a sunnah to use a siwak any time of the day, any time of the night. For a fasting person and for a person who is not fasting. Why do we mention this specifically? Because among the ulama, there is a difference of opinion as to whether it is makruh or not to use the siwak after midday during Ramadan. So, there are two opinions. Is it permissible to use a siwak after midday during Ramadan or not? So a group of ulama said it's makruh, it's disliked. Why? Because after midday is when a person's breath, the fasting person's breath begins to emit after midday. So you've fasted for a couple of hours, now the smell of the fasting person begins to emit and come out. And they said that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that the smell of the fasting person is much beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal than the smell of musk. So if you use this and you change that smell, you're changing something that is beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal. So they said it's disliked. Do not use it after midday until Maghrib time. But the stronger opinion is the second opinion. And that is that it is not makruh and it may be used at Salat al-Asr when you're fasting and even just before al-Maghrib, before you break your fast. Why? Number one, because we said that a siwak earns a person the pleasure of Allah. And the believer is in need of Allah's pleasure every moment of the day. Even after midday of the days he is fasting. That's number one. Number two, this hadith. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, I would have commanded them to use the siwak at every prayer. And after midday there is a Asr prayer. And then there is al-Maghrib prayer. But the Asr prayer, it would still be a sunnah to use it. And if a person made wudu, and if a person woke up from his sleep at Asr time or after Asr, he slept during Ramadan, we will still say it is permissible and it is a sunnah to use the siwak even if you are fasting. And then the other thing is, the smell of the fasting person has nothing to do with his mouth. The smell emits from his stomach. So even if you use the siwak, it's not going to change anything. Yani the siwak doesn't get rid of the bad smell, the apparent bad smell to people, that is. Amma to Allah Azza wa Jal, this is a beloved smell. But for the fasting person, if he used a siwak after midday, the smell of the fasting person will still come out from his internal, and then that smell would still emit from his mouth. So you really didn't change anything by avoiding a siwak or by using a siwak. Now, okay. So that's concerning this hadith. With the hadith as well, we said that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, if I did not think it was a burden upon my nation, I would have commanded them to use a siwak at every wudu. So we said the siwak, the usage of a siwak for as-salat would be just before the imam begins his salat. As the iqamah is being given, or even before the iqamah, if a person was to take out his siwak and brush his teeth left and right, we'll speak about the usage of it, then that would be the sunnah in its place. The other hadith about al-wudu. How is it used at the time of wudu? So here there are three opinions among al-ulama. One opinion mentions that it is completely used even before you start anything. So you start with a siwak, then you'll say Bismillah, you'll turn on the tap, and you begin your wudu. That's one opinion. The second opinion is that a person would use the wudu قبل غسل الكفين. So he will say Bismillah, then before he washes his hand, he'll use a siwak, then he washes his hand, and then he does the rinsing of the nose and the mouth and continues. And the third opinion is that it is بعد المضمضة والاستنشاق, that it is to be used after rinsing the nose and the mouth. So you've Bismillah, you've washed your hand, you've rinsed the nose and the mouth 3 times. Now you use the siwak, and then you put the siwak down, and you continue by washing your face and your hands and your head, and then your feet. And the more correct, wallahu a'lam, is the first two opinions. One of the first two. And that is that to be used completely before the wudu. Why? Because when you use the siwak before the wudu, it is expected that some hairs of the siwak would cling into your teeth and your mouth and so on. So then when you rinse your mouth, that's supposed to wash all that away. And if you use the siwak after rinsing the nose and the mouth 3 times, perhaps a person would then need a 4th rinse of the mouth to clear out whatever has stuck in his mouth of the hairs of a siwak. But it only makes sense, wallahu a'lam, that it is to be used before the wudu and not after al-madmada wal-istinshaq, and the matter is open. Yani whatever a person did, that's fine. Now, and of course, before the salat, when a person uses a siwak before the salat, a light usage of a siwak, a light usage, so that he doesn't bleed the gum or something. So just a light brush on the teeth before a salat. Whereas before the wudu, a person can go a little bit more intense, not intense to the point he's going to bleed himself, but just in case he bled or anything, he can clear that out while he rinses his nose and his mouth during al-wudu. طيب. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم said عند كل صلاة, at every time of prayer. So this includes the obligatory prayers, and it also includes the voluntary prayers. And it also includes al-janaza prayer, because the janaza prayer is called a salat, in which it requires wudu. There is Allahu Akbar, it begins with Allahu Akbar, and it ends with at-taslim. And anything that begins with Allahu Akbar and ends with at-taslim is called a salat. So this عند كل صلاة, salat here is عامة. It is a general term that refers to all the prayers. Of course, this doesn't refer to the to sajdat al-shukr or sajdat al-tilawa, if you're making a sajda of tilawa, because that would be considered a dhikr. That's not a salat. So we spoke about that before, and we said that that doesn't even require wudu, doesn't require facing the qibla and so on. But if a person did those things, there's no problem. And if a person used a siwak before sajdat al-shukr, no problem. Because we said it is emphasized, especially at times of dhikr and reading Quran, and this sajda is from the types of dhikr. Now, okay. Also, al-ulama rahimahumullah, they mention that if a person prayed night prayers and he was going to pray 2 after 2 after 2 after 2, so what does he do? Does he use the siwak before every 2 units he prays? So here al-ulama rahimahumullah, they said it's enough to use it once. So let's say now Ramadan is coming, or Taraweeh is coming, and you're fulfilling the sunnah at time of Taraweeh. So you use it at the beginning of Taraweeh, and that should be enough until the end of Al-Witr. Unless a person made a longer time between 2 units and 2 units. So let's say you're praying at home, you prayed 2 rak'at, then you hanged out for half an hour, and then you wanted to pray the other 2. Now use the siwak, because there was a long distance or time between your first 2 and your next 2. But if you're praying them one after the other, then once would be having fulfilled a sunnah. And this is the same thing when they speak about dua ul-istiftah, the opening dua of a salat. So if you're praying the night prayer and you started Allahu Akbar, Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik wa tabarak asmuk wa ta'ala jadduk wa la ilaha ghayruk. This is from the famous opening supplications, otherwise there's many. And you finished your 2 units, and then you got up to pray another 2, khalas. You don't have to repeat dua al-istiftah. You just pray Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Unless you gave a longer time between the first 2 and the next 2 units, then you repeat dua al-istiftah. طيب, جميل. That's clear, بإذن الله. تمام. Okay, so we're discussing now بما يستاك المسلم. What do you use for a siwak? So number 1, and this is the best option to use for a miswak or for a siwak, and that is the siwak that is coming from shajaratul arak. It has a difficult name in English, I haven't memorized it, but it's called shajaratul arak. It's a tree that grows in certain parts of the world, and it's called shajaratul arak. And from that, the best siwak is taken. It's actually the roots of a tree. So they dig at the roots of the tree, they take them out, they cut it, they wash them, and then this is it. That's it. This was a root. and then it grows again, and this is how they extract a siwak. So the best type is al-arak, which is this. And also, subhanallah, even scientific research has proven that the kind of components in which this is made of, it's incredible stuff. And it's been proven to have health benefits to the human body. And so this is why today you'll find that they've made from this a toothpaste. So this, it's they shred it in some sort of way and they extract from it certain matters, and they've made it into a toothpaste. You can purchase it. It's on the apps. You can say Miswak toothpaste, and you can purchase it. Really good, really beneficial for the gum health. Now, as opposed to using the other commercial stuff, Allahu A'lam what's in it. But this stuff would be very good. You're recommended to buy that stuff and try it bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. Now, so that's the first thing. Shajaratul arak. Number 2, jarid al-nakhl. If this option is not found, then the next best thing is to take a siwak from the frond of the palm tree. So you know how the palm tree grows and then it has these branches that come out? They're actually called the fronds. Al-jarid, the fronds. So from that frond, they make toothsticks. And that was given to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he used this before. Now, for that's the second best option. The third best option is the twig of the olive tree. So if you took a twig of an olive tree and you use that as a siwak, then that's fine. And a person should not use the twig of any tree, because perhaps the tree is harmful and then a person poisons himself and harms himself. So this is, you take the twig of a known tree that is not harmful, like the twig of an olive tree. And then the fourth thing that is mentioned by al-ulama rahimahumullah, and this was actually a hadith of Anas radiyallahu anhu. He said, يُجْزِئُ مِنَ السِّوَاكِ الْأُصْبَعِ, that a person can use his finger as a siwak. والموفق رحمه الله, موفق الدين al-Maqdisi, he mentioned in his big fiqh book al-Mughni, he wrote in there, وَإِنِ اسْتَاكَ بِإِصْبَعِهِ أو خرقة فالصحيح أنه يصيب السنة بقدر ما يحصل من الاستياك. He said, and if a person was to use his finger or a handkerchief, so you put the handkerchief on your finger and you brushed your teeth, then the correct opinion is that a person has achieved a sunnah in using a siwak, and he earns reward according to how much he has purified of his mouth. MashaAllah, there is no excuse for anyone not to engage in this sunnah of a siwak. And also the toothbrush that we have today, if you used it with the intention of a siwak, then that also brushes the teeth and it cleans it and it earns reward. But it doesn't, of course, have the benefits of al-arak. Al-arak is people seek this and intend this for using it to brush their teeth because of its health benefits, the natural properties that Allah Azza wa Jal has put into it. Allahu A'lam. The second hadith with us is hadith Hudhayf ibn al-Yaman radiyallahu anhu. He said, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا قام من الليل يشوص فاه بالسواك. This is the hadith of Hudhayf ibn al-Yaman radiyallahu anhu. He said that when the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam woke up from a night's sleep, يشوص فاه, he would brush and wash his mouth with a siwak. And what we take from this hadith is that it is a sunnah and highly emphasized sunnah to use a siwak whenever waking up from a night's sleep. Ulama rahimahumullah also included in this when waking up from a day's sleep. So if you slept during the day as well, then it's also a sunnah because of this hadith. And they also included in this hadith, whenever a person's breath changes, then it is a sunnah to use. Because when you wake up from your night's sleep, that's when a person has a kind of bad breath. So at any kind of bad breath, it is also a sunnah to use a siwak. Perhaps if you've sat for a long time silent, and then you open your mouth and you spoke and there's a bad smell, then you use it. Where's the dalil? This hadith here, right? This hadith. Because using it after waking up from a night's sleep, what was the reason for that? Because of the bad smell. So wherever there's a bad smell that a person smells from his mouth, then it is a emphasized sunnah to use it. Also, Ali radiallahu anhu mentioned a narration, and this is found in Sunan ibn Majah. He said, "Inna afwahakum turuqun lil Quran, fatayyibuha bis siwak." That your mouth is pathways for the Quran. See how beautiful this is? He said the mouth of a person, it's a pathway for the Quran, meaning the Quran comes out, it drives out from a person's mouth. It's a pathway. As a result, he said, فَطَيِّبُوهَا بِالسِّوَاكِ. Then purify and beautify these pathways with a siwak. طيب. The hadith also here, it didn't mention that يَشُوصُ أَسْنَانَهُ. The hadith didn't say he brushed his teeth with a siwak. It says يَشُوصُ فَاهُ. He brushed and washed his mouth with the siwak. Even we learn from this that a siwak is not only for the teeth. A siwak is for the entire mouth. The teeth, the gums, and the tongue. The siwak is to be used in every part of the mouth. يَشُوصُ فَاهُ. His whole mouth. He used to wash and brush with a siwak. Now, فإذن the tongue, the teeth, and the gums. طيب. Second last hadith. عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت. This is the hadith of Aisha رضي الله عنها. She said, دخل عبد الرحمن ابن أبي بكر على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. She said that Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Bakr. Who's that? That's the son of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, who is also the sister or the brother of Aisha radiallahu anha. So Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Bakr is the brother of Aisha radiallahu anha. So both of them are the children of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is married to Aisha radiallahu anha. So she says, my brother Abdul Rahman entered upon the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and this is when? This is in his last days, just before his death. So this hadith is going to narrate the story of the final moments of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Abdul Rahman radiallahu anhu entered the house of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Aisha radiallahu anha says, وَأَنَا مُسْنِدَتُهُ إِلَى صَدْرِي. And the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam was leaning on my chest. So his head was on the chest of Aisha radiallahu anha, and his legs were down. He was laying down. وَمَعَ عَبْدِ الرَّحْمَنِ. And by the way, from there we learn the compassion towards the sick person. So this is compassion. It's a sunnah to have care and kindness and compassion and gentleness towards the sick person. And this is Aisha radiallahu anha having the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam on her as opposed to him laying on a bed. Tamam. She said, وَمَعَ عَبْدِ الرَّحْمَنِ سِوَاكٌ رَطْبٌ يَسْتَنُّ بِهِ. And Abdul Rahman entered, and in his hand he was carrying a siwak, رَطْبٌ, a moist siwak, flexible, new siwak. What that teaches us is that the sunnah is to always have a moist siwak. That's better. Because if you use a dry siwak, it becomes hard, and then that could probably damage a person's gums. So the flexible, moist siwak like these ones here, they're the sunnah to use. So he had a moist siwak with him, يَسْتَنُّ بِهِ, and he was using it. And that is proof that it is permissible to use in front of others. فأبده رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بصره. For Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم is sick. He can't even talk. He struggles to talk at this moment. But he stared at the siwak with Abdul Rahman's hand. أبده بصره. He stared at it. فأخذته. In another narration, it says, Aisha رضي الله عنها says, فرأيته ينظر إليه. She said, I saw the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم staring at the siwak. وعرفت أنه يحب السواك. And I knew that he loves the siwak. فقلت. So then I said, آخذه لك? Should I bring it for you? She's saying to the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم. فأشار برأسه النعم. He motioned with his head, yes. He did like this. He's very weak to talk. So he motioned with his head, yes. Okay. Then the hadith says, فَأَخَذْتُ السِّوَاكِ. So she took the siwak from her brother. You see this, subhanAllah. The companions, they would know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the look he had in his face. And they would know what he wants, what he likes, what he dislikes, just from the look at his face. What does that teach you? It teaches you how close they were to him and how much they lived with him, to the point now they know his facial expressions. If he likes something, if he dislikes something, if he's angered at something, if he's upset with something, they can tell from his face without speaking, without him speaking, subhanAllah. Now, so she says, I took the siwak, فَقَضَمْتُهُ. I cut it. She cut it with her teeth. So she must have taken the siwak and I chopped it with her teeth. And you can do it with the siwak. You'll be able to cut it. If you went slowly through it, you'll cut it. She says, فَقَضَمْتُهُ فَطَيَّبْتُهُ. And then I made it flexible and I softened it for it, like this. Made the hairs expose and she flexed it for it. What we learn from this is that a siwak that is used by one person could be used by another person. If he was to cut its tip and sharpen it at another place, right? Because this is what is happening now. She says, فَقَضَمْتُهُ فَطَيَّبْتُهُ ثُمَّ دَفَعْتُهُ إِلَى النَّبِيِّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. And then once she had done that, she presented it and gave it to the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم. She then says, فَمَا رَأَيْتُ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عليه وسلم استنى استنانا أحسن منه. She said, I have never seen the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم use the siwak better than that day he used it. شوف يعني النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم is dying and he is still committed to the sunnah of as-siwak, and not only in any kind of manner, in the best possible manner. It's just a few moments before he will be moving from this life to the afterlife. Subhanallah. This is the commitment of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam upon his own sunnah that he taught us. Then she says, فَمَا عَدَى أَنْ فَرَغَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ رَفَعَ يَدَهُ أَوْ إِصْبَعَهُ. She said, and once he finished brushing his teeth, he raised his eyesight and he raised his finger. He raised his finger. And he began to say, فِي الرَّفِيقِ الْأَعْلَى فِي الرَّفِيقِ الْأَعْلَى فِي الرَّفِيقِ الْأَعْلَى. He said it 3 times. Al-Rafiq al-A'la has many meanings. One of the meanings that Al-Rafiq and Al-A'la are 2 names of Allah Azza wa Jal. So it means I want to be in the company of Allah. I want to be in the company of Allah. I want to be in the company of Allah. And then the narration says, حَتَّى قَضَى حَتَّى قُبِضَ وَمَالَتْ يَدُهُ. He continued to say it until the 3rd time, and then that's when his soul departed his body and his hand, مَالَتْ يَدُهُ, his hand dropped. That's the narration. That's in Sahih al-Bukhari. But to just focus on this word, his hand dropped. This is 1,400 years ago. And we know the final action he did with his hand at the time of his death. This is indeed a miracle. No one's history has ever been preserved in the same manner. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam's history was preserved. Look back at every huge figure that lived on the face of this earth. Allahu a'lam how they died. Allahu a'lam what they said at the time of their death, what they did at the time of his death. But here you have until there's a narration that says his hand dropped. This motion was recorded. The people had love for it. And the people at that time took every single action he did that there is guidance for us. And they relayed it to Al-Ummah. Now, this in itself, just this word of مَالَتْ يَدُهُ, when I look at it, I say, subhanallah, ad-deen is preserved. Subhanallah, this is got to be the greatest religion on earth. 100% no doubt. And this is the authentic deen that Allah Azza wa Jal is pleased for his slaves to follow. Subhanallah. Now, and this is how Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam died. And the last of the sunnah that he used is this. This is the last sunnah that he practiced before his death. And not only in any fashion, in the best possible way. Aisha radiallahu anha is saying, I never seen him use it the best way in the same manner I saw him use it when he was dying. Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, in the end of this hadith said that she used to say, مَاتَ بَيْنَ حَاقِنَتِي وَذَاقِنَتِي, that the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam died between حَاقِنَتي and ذَاقِنَتي. Al-حَاقِنَة is the lower part of a person's abdomen. Here, this is al-حَاقِنَة. وَذَاقِنَتي, the sternum, here. So this is where he died. He died in between this area. As we said, because he was laying on Aisha radiallahu anha, he used the siwak, and this is where he died, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this, of course, is from the virtue of Aisha radiallahu anha, having a Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam died on her, and she used to say this to the people, meaning, this was a virtue for her. And she used to also say, جَمَعَ اللَّهُ بَيْنَ رِيقِي وَرِيقِهِ, that Allah Azza wa Jal combined between my saliva and his saliva. What does she mean by this? Remember, because when she used the siwak, and she cut it with her mouth, and then she softened it and flexed it with her mouth, then it was put in the mouth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's her saliva combined with the saliva of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, final hadith, hadith Abi Musa radiyallahu anhu, قال أتيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو يستاك بسواك والسواك قال وطرف السواك على لسانه يقول أع كأنه والسواك في فيه لا على لسانه يقول أع والسواك في فيه كأنه يتهوع. The final hadith, Abu Musa radiallahu anhu, he says, I came to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I came to the Messenger at some time, ordinary time. This wasn't a time of prayer or anything. He came in at some random time. He said, and I saw and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he was brushing his teeth with a siwak. When? At a random time. Not a salat time, not a wudu time, not at the times in where it is emphasized to use. What are we learning? The commitment of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam about siwak. Someone just walked in and happened to see Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam using a siwak in his mouth. So this is something, always have a habit. There's people that use cigarettes. You should change it. Put this in their mouth, put this in their hands instead. And then put it in their mouth and get used to this. Why not? Earn reward. How much of the benefit is there in that? Subhanallah. He said, وَهُوَ يَسْتَاكُ بِسِوَاكٍ. Abu Musa said, وَطَرَفُ السِّوَاكِ عَلَى لِسَانِهِ. And the tip of the siwak is on his tongue. Which again proves what? That the siwak is not only for the teeth, it's for the tongue as well. على لسانه يقول أع. And as it was on his tongue, he began to say أع. Now this أع is a sound that is made when a person has something close to the end of his tongue. So that, when you put the siwak to the end, like that, a person is about to vomit, because the hadith said كأنه يتهوع, as though he is about to vomit. For this is teaching the excessiveness in the use of a siwak in the mouth, all the way until the end. How can Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used it? So that Abu Musa radiallahu anh entered when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam like this, and he narrated it as he saw it and as he heard it. Subhanallah. Now, some ulama said perhaps this or sound came because some of the hairs of the siwak would get stuck in the throat, and then you do like this to bring them out. Allahu a'lam. Finally, one more thing, and that is the words of Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, in where he said that we benefit from this hadith and all the other hadith, that what is legislated when using a siwak on the tongue is to use it vertically on the tongue. So this type of motion, like that, vertically on the tongue. And when the siwak is used on the teeth and on the gum, then it's used horizontally, like this. Well, you can use it like this, no problems, but we're speaking about what's the best. The best is not this. The best would be to go horizontal on the teeth and on the gum, and to go vertical on the tongue. Wallahu a'lam. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.